Let's take a look at array prototype filter. So first things first, what is an array filter? Array filter is a method that exists on our array prototype. It was introduced in ECMAScript version 5 and is supported in all modern browsers. Array filter allows us to conditionally return certain elements from our array into a brand new array. It's also commonly used to remove items from an array by simply excluding them from the result. Think of array filter as I want a new array just containing the items that I need. For example, we could look at different prices and just ask for the items that are perhaps above 199, which would then give us this item and this item. When we use an array filter, we need to then return an expression that our filter evaluates to either true or false. So we need to think about things slightly differently. The key to understanding filter is to realize that our callbacks are in fact returning an expression that evaluates to true or false. Array elements that evaluate to true are stored in the new array, and items that evaluate to false are simply excluded. Once the filter has completed, you can then access the new array of our values. So let's have a look at the syntax of array filter. So let's go ahead and say items.filter. Now, again, we get the exact same arguments here as ForEach and map. So there's nothing new that we can learn here. We have that callback function, which takes a value, the index, and the array. Inside the body of the function, we would then go ahead and execute our code. We can optionally change the this arg, and like we mentioned, we have some kind of return value which contains any items in our array. Now, unlike array prototype map, we're not actually going to be changing any of these values. When filter returns us, they will be intact as if they were exactly as they were here. Now let me demonstrate a very simple example of a filter. We're going to say const filtered equals, and we're going to pass an array of true, true, and false. Underneath, we can console log our filtered array. From the get-go, we have true, true, and false. Now, what we need to do with array filter is provide an expression that simply returns values that somehow evaluate to true based on what we have passed in. Now, the easiest way to demonstrate, we can add a dot filter. Now, instead of using the value or things directly, we're just going to simply pass the word Boolean with a capital B and hit save. So you can see now that our false result has completely disappeared because we're evaluating each value to a Boolean. What's actually happening here, if you're a little bit stuck, is something like this, and we're using JavaScript's Boolean function to pass each value back to our filter after it's been evaluated to a Boolean. So again, we'll hit save and we see absolutely no difference in the console. This is just a shorthand way of doing things because Boolean is actually a function, and when filter runs, it then calls it like this with each value. One thing it's important to know is filter can return you as many values as you like. So regardless of how many results you do in fact get, filter will return you any expressions that evaluate to true. It will return you those individual items. So let's get rid of this example and we'll create a nice new filter below. Now what I want to do is call these the expensive items. Let's assume that we want to create a new array with just the more expensive items in. So what is expensive? We're going to say anything above 199, such as our Big Slurp and the Super Burger, are 299 and 399. They are considered expensive in our code base. So let's go ahead and filter the cheaper items out. So let's say expensive items equals, and we want to items.filter, which then gives us each particular item. Now what we need to do is access something such as the items.price, but this isn't going to evaluate straight away to a Boolean. We might need to use some comparison operators such as greater than 199. We could then underneath say console log our expensive items, save this out and check out our console. So hopefully we should in fact have our Big Slurp and the Super Burger in our array number 1. Array number 2 remains completely untouched and does not have our jumbo fries. We're not mutating our array at all. Now, filter is in fact quite a nice and easy way to essentially omit our items that we do not want. We're essentially any items lower than 199. So we want any items that are in fact greater than 199. So that's how you can think about array filter. Now to finish off, what I want to do is show you how to filter without array filter. The old way of doing things, as you could call them. So here we're going to take our constant of expensive items and just set that to a brand new array. This is going to be our filtered array as it was here as well. Much like before, we can let I equals 0. I is then less than our items dot length. We can then go ahead and increment that variable, create a reference to each individual item based off of our items. We can pass in each index, and now we can just simply go ahead and filter. So if the item dot price is greater than 199, then we simply want to grab our expensive items and push each individual item in. We can then take our expensive items array underneath, add a console log, and see what this gives us in the console. Much like array.prototype filter, we have now filtered out any items that are less than 199. We have our super burger, the big slurp of 399 and 299. And that's it. You've now learned how to use array filter to filter your array to a specific set of values. You could think of array filter kind of like a functional if statement. If my array element meets a particular criteria, we can then ask for a copy of it back. Otherwise, we don't want it. So just to do a quick recap, we looked at the syntax of array filter. We get given the value, we get given the index and the array. We looked at how filter will evaluate each element in your array based off of an expression that you pass it inside the filter's callback. Here we're just cheating and going straight for true values, which is why we just end up with true, true, and false is completely eradicated, however remains untouched in the initial array. We've then looked at our filter, where we used a comparison of checking that the item's price is greater than 199, and we logged out these expensive items. And finally, I've just shown you how to think about them in a more imperative way. However, we do like to favor this declarative way of filtering our array items.